So if you haven't watched the video on my YouTube channel called You Are in a Trance, I suggest you watch that first because this video kind of relates to that. So in that video, I talk about how reading can put you into a trance. And so in that video, I was really referring to like religious, dogmatic, fear-based books put you into a trance when you read them. And that's why religion emphasizes, reading the book, Bible study, carrying the Bible with you. There's this attachment. It's a trance inducement tool that's being used. And so it's very powerful. And so it's very hard to break a trance. So, but I'm not saying all books, like don't read, is not the message of that video. It was, if you didn't understand what I was referring to, was like the religious dogmatic books. So I read, of course, I love reading, and I do go into trance. So I want to share with you an experience that I had where I actually went into such a heavy trance that the room around me changed and beings came into my room. So I was reading, and I'm sure, I don't know if everyone's heard of it. It's by Deborah Harkness, and it's called A Discovery of Witches. And there's a 3-part series to that. And this was years ago, when I was just kind of figuring out what the hell happened to me with my initiation and all that kind of stuff. And I was reading the book, and there were so many coincidences in the book, like dates, and like I could tell, like the lover in that story, to me was when you're a shaman, you have like a relationship and you have spirit allies, and sometimes they are of a romantic nature. In shamanic cultures, they would call them spirit wives or spirit husbands and things like that. So that's how I saw the male character in that book, and I forget his name. I forget the names of everything, but so I already knew that that was kind of her guide and protector. And then even the car he drove was a black Jaguar. And so right away I'm like, oh, that's the spirit animal. And so I could see all the symbolism she was putting into the book, and like timeline jumping and all that, which I have experienced also. So I get really, really, really deep into this book and couldn't, like the dates were freaking me out because they were significant dates in my life. And so I was getting really, really deep into it, and I was putting myself in the book, which is what we do a lot of the time, and that's why we cry and get really involved, because we put ourselves in this story. And then all of a sudden, the room that I was sitting in got really, really foggy, and that happens to me sometimes when the veil is getting thinner or I'm breaking through. There's like this fog. And then all of a sudden I see, it was like an older woman, I'm assuming, and she had a hood on and like a cape, and there was other beings behind her, like in a line. And I just kept looking at it, and it kept getting denser and denser, and coming into more solid. And it freaked me out because at this point, this is when things were just starting to happen. I didn't know what was going on, and it was scary for me. And so I freaked out, and I got up, and then it just faded away. So these beings can sense fear, and when they know that you're in fear, they will just dissipate. And so at that time, I had called someone that I had been talking to about this, that she didn't even understand what was happening with me, but at least she comforted me And I called her, and I said, this is what happened. My house was full of these beings and all that. And so she came over, and when I answered the door, she said, a little black dog just ran across your doorstep. And I'm like, I don't have a dog or anything like that. So later, as I'm reading other books, I read the stories of like what is called like the fairy train, where you get like and it's like I don't know if it's the queen of fairy or whatever, and it's a long line of them coming through your house, and I think part of it is like if the broom drops in your house, that means that the fairy train's coming to visit you, and it's an honor, and you leave out food and things like that. And a black dog is part of that, is also a symbolism of that. So I guess just me getting in such a heavy trance and everything attracted that to me, and I was able to witness that. I didn't know what it was at the time until later when I read a book that describing the same scenario. So that explained it to me. So I always eventually, usually months later, I'll read something that will explain what my experience was. So then I wondered, I'm like, I wonder if this author like enchanted these books somehow. Or I'm assuming she's had experiences like I have, and she's putting metaphors in the book instead of coming right out and saying what they really are. So it's an interesting series to read, and I know that now there's on the Sundance Channel, they've had it now in movie format. So if you're looking for some books to read, I'm not saying that you'll have the same experience I have, but something will penetrate in you. It's a lot of symbolism that if you're not even familiar with it, it still might make some shifts and changes inside of you. Because again, everything, is, especially in animism, is an oral tradition and done in myths. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't make connections inside of you somehow. So I would recommend reading that series if I were you, if you have time. It's keeps your interest going, and yeah, it's a really interesting series of books. So that's it for today, and I will see you on the next video.